Welcome back to Tying That Guy. I'm Wes Chatham, and this is my good friend, and he's such a sight for sore eyes, old Ty Franck. Feels like, how long has it been since we've seen each other? Last week? So long.
It's been a week.
You know what? An hour is an eternity without my Ty. I'm so thankful. I'm so psyched for today. We're going to be talking about America movies.
Yeah, I think the theme of today is America, fuck yeah. Like like that amazing song from Team America World Police. One of my favorite movies. So Joseph, please cut in a clip of that song right now.
In honor of America Day, Ty and me, his friend, we're going to do a top 5 for 4th of July movies. And I want to clarify this with Ty. Is this movies, and also, Joseph, I kind of like doing something different and just like we went straight into conversation and then we're just like going on and talking. Maybe we'll do like a little bit of an intro, but we could do it like middle way through as a different, because, you know, sometimes it would be fun just to hop on and we're in the middle of a conversation. So if we're doing these 4th of July movies, top 5, I feel, what do you think is more interesting, to do movies that are kind of like capture the American spirit and the rising above obstacles, or do you think movies that actually deal with 4th of July, that either take place on 4th of July?
I think the other category is too broad. I think there's way too many movies that are like,
it's too broad. But then, like, if you think about it, like, obviously Jaws would be one of those top movies. It's Independence Day. That's what they want to clean up the beach for the 4th of July. It's the big weekend and everything. That is the catalyst for them to, you know, to lie about the shark, or to try to not keep the shark hidden. So, but it's not a 4th of July movie.
No, but it's the fact that it is the 4th of July is part of the setting, is part of the setup for the movie, which to me seems more like a more narrow focus. Because if you just like movies that include like Yay America, that's going to be like 100 million movies.
Well, because like Team America doesn't take place on 4th of July, but that's a 4th of July movie. You know?
Is it? Is it a 4th of July movie?
Rocky IV is like that. That is the quintessential 4th of July movie, and that doesn't take place on 4th of July.
Yeah, I guess. But I don't know what you mean by quintessential 4th of July movie.
When the American spirit and rising above obstacles is the main thrust of the plot. You know, like,
that's
literally
a lot of movies.
At the end,
that's a lot of movies.
I know, Ty. I know. So how do we make it specific?
Yeah.
Just movies that take place on the 4th of July?
Or, I mean, for me, it would be like movies that the 4th of July, the fact that it is the 4th of July is part of the setup. Like you said with Jaws, the fact that the 4th of July is their big weekend, that's what leads them to lie about the shark, right? Because they don't want to head off the thing.
Okay.
One of the other examples, Independence Day, right? Like the big battle against the aliens is on 4th of July.
Born on the 4th of July.
Which, you know, that whole thing. I don't know. There's other movies like that like it's sort of central to it. And there's a lot of movies that include a 4th of July scene.
Would a movie like Forrest Gump qualify, because there is a 4th of July in the movie, and it's definitely a movie about, you know, well, I guess, so I guess that would, Let's go through the poll and see if there's anything. Okay, 1776, obviously. Apollo 13.
Is that on the 4th? I don't think that's on the 4th of July, right?
I don't think that's on the 4th of July. Born on the 4th of July, Captain America, The First Avenger, Glory. Was Glory on 4th of July? Hamilton, Hidden Figures.
I mean, these
Independence.
I'm having a hard time seeing what the common theme between this list is.
Yeah.
I mean, Independence Day is about 4th of July. Jaws takes place on 4th of July.
In Hamilton, you know,
it's the founding of the country kind of
part
thing.
Of that. Yeah, so that makes sense. What about Hidden Figures?
I don't think there's anything with the 4th of July in that one, is there?
I don't think so. Jaws is 4th of July. Kelly's Heroes. What was that movie?
It's World War II.
Oh, Kelly's Heroes. Yeah, that's a great movie. Miracle. I don't think that takes place on 4th of July. Rocky
Yeah.
4, Save It Private Ryan, The Patriot.
The Patriot is like, okay, so maybe the common thread then is movies about the founding of the country.
Ah,
right? Because that's what the 4th of July is about, right? It's Independence Day. It's the founding of the country. So that would include things like Hamilton, Patriot. Yeah, that kind of stuff would fit in there then, because it's founding of the country kind of stuff.
But that narrows it down. So we got 1776, Hamilton, The Patriot. That's about it. That's about it on our poll.
There's a bunch more movies about the founding of the country that we could add there. Hold on. I'm going to guess that there's going to be about a jillion of these. Here we go. Ranking American Revolution films and television. What do they got on their list? Oh, they got a bunch of shit I don't care about. These guys suck. John Adams. John Adams is great.
That's
the
a
miniseries.
Yeah.
The miniseries. Yeah, that's great.
Do we count that?
I don't know, but it is great. Have you seen Drums Along the Mohawk, the 39 movie with Henry Fonda? That's a Revolutionary War movie. I don't like any of their other choices. Okay, so we got The Patriot, which is not a movie that I love. 1776. Revolution. I've never seen Revolution.
We should make a special exception for John Adams because it's such a limited list.
Yeah.
And it's such a fantastic miniseries. I really enjoyed that miniseries. The Drums of Mohawk. Drums Along the Mohawk.
Yeah.
You saw that one?
Yeah, a long time ago. It's from like 1939 or 1940, I think, is when it came out.
Yeah. So we pretty much, I mean, look, I'm a big fan of Hamilton. I loved that musical, and I listened to it, and I was, because I'm a fan of Alexander Hamilton, I read that book, the one that they made the musical about, the biography. I think it was Chernow biography. And then I actually went, I was down in that area, and I went to the island in Nevis, and I went to his museum in the Caribbean.
Ah.
Yeah, and because I there's something I love, like his strength of character and his work ethic, and to me, like, he was like the quintessential like real man, you know, like what he endured and what he put on his shoulders to forge this nation, and his talent, the outsized contribution he has made to this country is second and only to Benjamin Franklin.
I agree on Hamilton, but I think for me a big part of it is the fact that it's just a very well made musical. I mean, it was pretty groundbreaking when it came out. And then John Adams, I think, is an amazing story about the founding of the country. And what the great thing about John Adams, so Hamilton is like this amazing snapshot of this one period, but John Adams, what I love about it is it covers so much time, that miniseries. Mm-hmm. And you really get to see the moment when it's decided the only way for us to get redress on the things that we're unhappy about, the only option left open is to fight a revolution.
Yeah. Through
the revolution.
But could you imagine the courage that would take? And to be, and also, you know, it wasn't like we had the internet then. We weren't getting play-by-plays, or you weren't really on top of everything that happens. And maybe the final blow or the final letter was like, fuck you, well, fuck you. And then 6 months later, you forgot about it, and you're working in the garden, and all of a sudden these British ships pull up in the harbor, and you're like, oh, they're here to kill us.
Yep.
And then to have the backbone and the strength to say, well, this is one of the world's biggest superpowers at that time, and we're just a ragtag band of, you know, misfits. Like, we're gonna come together, and the backbone to say, no, we're not backing down. We're gonna fight back and go in and fight and fucking win. It's crazy.
Well, and the thing that John Adams doesn't shy away from, which I appreciated, because look, I understand propaganda, I understand how it works, and I understand the value in what they call faith-building myths, you know, where it's like this sort of mythology that makes everybody pull together and join the same team, but is kind of based on bullshit. I understand the value of that. And this sort of like scrappy Americans fighting against, the bully British is the mythology that we need to believe about the founding of the country. The thing that John Adams does that it doesn't shy away from, which I really appreciated, is actually none of that would have happened if the French didn't want to just piss the British off.
Oh yeah.
Right.
But
it wasn't just us being scrappy. It was the French pouring so many resources into us.
Right.
To take us away from the British. And I love, and a lot of stories about the revolution leave that part out. And I love that John Adams did, is all I was saying.
And Benjamin Franklin was an outsized person that made that happen. He was so brilliant, and that's what I'm saying is like, that's getting the French on our side to help us in that way was like one of the single biggest movements in that war. And Benjamin Franklin,
it's the only reason we won.
Yeah. So, but even with the French, I mean, the odds were still very much against us.
So the French helped us sort of in the same way we're helping the Ukraine, right? The French were not going to like give us legions of their troops. They were not going to do that, right? Yeah. So they had to help us in other material ways. That the fighting still came down to the colonists, almost entirely the colonists doing the fighting. It's not like the French all by themselves won that war. They didn't. That's ridiculous.
No, they helped, and the odds are still against us. But it was also, I think, at least on American soil, like the first time that type of guerrilla warfare was used. And so the British were very structured and formal in how they planned and executed their battles, where the Americans were ambushed. They would hide out in the woods. They would, they would do whatever they had to do. And the French haven't seen anything like that at that point. And that was a big advantage for us. And that's, the thing is like occupying is very hard.
Okay. So that's not entirely accurate. So the British and French had been fighting over Canada for decades before the Revolutionary War, right? And both sides had learned a great deal from the way the native people fought, right? That's why they liked native scouts. That's why they used, the local tribes as scouts and stuff, because they fought a very different way than the French and British did. So they had learned about that. The issue with the British is that the lag time between gaining information and their very stodgy command structures back in Britain making adjustments was huge. So even though the British in America were like, we got to stop lining up for these guys because they're not fighting that way. They're refusing to give us the kind of fight we want. Their generals, the leadership, still wanted to fight that kind of war. That was how you fought wars.
We're making the same point.
Yeah, we are. Yeah,
you're attributing it to a lag of communication and time to get information to them. But the reality is that they haven't seen. Well, I guess essentially what you said, they've seen it, but they didn't know. They were not able to respond and also they didn't know the land as well as we did.
Yeah,
they didn't know, and so if you're gonna have guerrilla warfare on a foreign soil, but that was definitely one of the advantages for us during that.
Yeah, well, and it was. You're right. It was knowledge of terrain. All of that stuff is right for me because I've spent a lot of time studying the history of these wars. And the thing that is consistently true is the way that the kind of war that you learn as a young officer becomes entrenched when you're an old general, and you don't want to change that, right? You saw in World War I the traditional European powers still trying to fight the way that they had fought in the past, and it took them a really long time to accept the fact that style of warfare was dead, that you couldn't do that anymore. Yeah. That machine guns and artillery and
trench warfare,
airburst shells, all of that stuff had made the old style of fighting irrelevant. And it took a really long time for these entrenched generals and heads of state to accept that fact.
Right.
And I think the same thing was happening in the Revolutionary War, that the British troops on the ground, I'm sure they wanted to hide behind a rock. Right. I'm sure the average British redcoat was like, let's stop lining up for these motherfuckers to shoot us. Let's go hide behind rocks and trees. And their command structure was still insisting that they try to fight the way they used to fight.
Yeah, and I don't even necessarily know that's true. I think that one of the things about training, particularly probably that type of training they're going through, is you train and train and train and train and train. So then when your mind shuts down from adrenaline and from fear, and you can't think straight, you always just revert back to your training. And you always revert back to what you know best. So if they had this system of training and this outdated battle tactics, whenever there was like the heat or the danger came on, they would fall back into what they knew best. Even if they tried to adapt to some type of, they're like, all right, we got to start doing this. If it's a spontaneous thing, they're going to fall back in their old habits. Drop to that knee, pull the gun up, shoot the gun, load while the other guys shoot, and then they load. I remember reading this book a long time ago, and I wish I would have, if I would have thought, I might go back if I knew we were going to talk about. But it talks about military. It was about military tactics, and it was specifically about the Revolutionary War. And maybe you and I had different understandings of what that was. But my understanding is, and I know that they fought in Canada and they've seen, that type of fighting, but they were really caught flat-footed. They were really caught flat-footed with, there was where they would be on trails and they would get ambushed and they had the higher ground. And then when they would go after, or anytime they would mount a more powerful force, then the enemy would flee. So they would hit them while the advantage, and as soon as they lost the advantage, they would leave. And that constant nibbling at them created terror within their minds, created terror and fear, and they started losing confidence because the first mistake they made, which is the most common mistake, is they completely underestimated the force they were going to encounter. Yeah. Second mistake they made is they kept falling on old, outdated tactics, and they were getting nibbled to death, and the terror wreaked havoc, and it started lowering their confidence, lowering their morale. And also the French pouring money to us, they were slowly draining them because they were fighting wars on two different fronts.
Yeah, that was a huge part of it. But the thing, we talk about this in the Expanse, actually, in the books of the Expanse, that distance is always measured in time. And, fighting a war in the colonies in America with your heads of state and your command structure in England meant that it took a couple of months to get a message from the colonies to the command structure, and then their response took a couple of months to get back to you. Mm-hmm. So even as new developments came up, even as new tactics were being exploited by the colonists, any information going back and forth between frontline troops and high-level commanders in England, there was like this 3 or 4 month lag time. Mm-hmm. So once you have that, it's almost impossible to quickly adapt to a changing environment. Whereas the colonists, their generals were like right there. So, I mean, you could just walk over to the general and go, hey, general, I noticed this thing over here. Maybe we should do something about that, right? Whereas the British had to send a letter to some guy, in England talking about it.
But there was also, the Americans were more compartmentalized, where some of the lower rank or whatever, they would have more power to make in-time calls for what they were doing. The British military, specifically at that time, was very structured, that you had to go up the chain of command. The chain of command had to relay, whereas there was way more flexibility with the American army. What's interesting is there was just like farmers that would just go grab a gun and they would go fight. Another thing where the advantage is like you just had these independent thinkers that would have to make decisions in real time with what they were doing. And so it's harder to figure out people that don't have system or modes of behavior. It's just like a group of guys that had lived in their farms were close together. They just took up some rifles and they went and they're just like, I think we should be fighting over here. So we know these woods and we know where they're coming down.
And, you were in the military. I'm sure you guys talked about this. I mean, you were in the Navy, but still, I'm sure it was talked about when you talked about military tactics. Knowledge of the ground that the battle's going to be fought on, you cannot underestimate the value of that. That's why in the pre-satellite and airplane days, scouting was so vital. You had to send people out there. They had to look at the ground. They had to be able to come back and accurately report where the roads were, where the rivers were, where the trees were, all that stuff so that you could plan around it. And the difference between getting a scout to come back and draw you a little map of what the ground looks like and having a bunch of people on the other team who live there and know exactly where everything is, it's such a huge difference. And you look at all of the lengthy wars that have gone on between superpowers and revolutionaries. I mean, you look at like Russia,
Iraq.
Russia and Afghanistan, exactly.
Yeah.
America Ukraine. In Iraq. Yeah, on paper, there's no way that the Afghanis can fight Russia. Russia's gigantic, right? But they held the USSR for decades. On paper, there's no way Iraq can fight against America. Like, there's just no way.
Also, you can't underestimate the ferociousness that people fight when you're invading their home. If you're 100 miles away from home and you're fighting over territory that you don't really know that way or whatever, but if you took your kid to that park, if you have picnics and sitting on that bench, if you take that bus to work every day and you see tanks rolling in your neighborhood, your place, you're going to fight with everything that you have. And there's a ferociousness in that kind of fight that is not matched. You know, a lot of what, you know, you read about these stories with some of the Russian troops, and they're like, we thought we were on an exercise mission. So how are they going to compete with these guys?
If you remember in Dances with Wolves, there's a scene in there where the tribe that Kevin Costner has gotten friendly with and is spending a lot of time with winds up having to defend their home territory from an attack. And in the voiceover narration, he talks about this is a kind of warfare he had never experienced before, which is where you are fighting a battle to the death and the children that you are protecting are like 10 feet behind you. Mm-hmm. That kind of warfare, like it had never even occurred to him that would happen. But now he's in a fight like exactly what you're talking about. I'm not just fighting to hold some territory. I'm fighting for people like children and old people that are members of my family, and they are literally in a tent behind me as I'm fighting. Yeah, the level of ferociousness you're going to have defending when they're right there, it's a whole other level. Yeah. Because the idea that if things go badly, you can just run away, that's gone now. That's gone. That's off the table. So there is no version of it going badly that you feel like will let you run away. So you're going to fight to the bitter end. You're going to fight to the death.
I used to read a lot about Napoleon, and that's one of his geniuses, with the exception of Russia, of course, getting pulled into Russia and going in those winters. But, you know, you talk about somebody that could just evaluate terrain and tactics and make decisions in the moment, and he was brilliant at that. And it's really impressive to read like what he accomplished and the amount of time he accomplished it in.
Well, he was also very innovative when it came to the use of artillery. Mm-hmm. He was a huge proponent of the person with the most cannons wins the battle, and his ability to get his cannons into tactically advantageous positions, which is what you're talking about, the tactics of it.
Yeah,
he would figure out the terrain. He would put his cannons in all of the most advantageous locations in the terrain, and he would just blow the other guys off the field with barrages of cannon fire.
How bad would that suck? Like if you were fighting in those days where it all came down to the general and tactics and how and if you're just a regular soldier, and if you have a shitty general, you know, and it's like just getting people slaughtered, and they're like, and you know, that general might get demoted, or, you know, he lost that battle, but you know, they're getting, you know, so many people killed. But if you had a general that was, you know, really great, like a Napoleon, but then Napoleon's always bringing you into fights.
Well, and you know, if taking it back to America and the Revolutionary War, which is kind of the theme here, Washington, every time he tried to fight a straight up battle against the British, he almost always lost all of those battles. You know, you're talking about the guerrilla stuff, but the Americans also tried to fight some straight up battles. They actually put together armies with cannons and all that stuff, the traditional fighting style, and tried to fight some pitched battles against the British, and they almost always lost those. Right, the British were just better at that. Mm-hmm. But the thing with generals like Washington is they still inspired confidence in their men even when they were losing every fight.
Yeah,
you know, the men who fought for them wanted to keep fighting. They didn't lose heart. They didn't get discouraged. You know, Washington's like, you know, those generals. And the other thing is those generals are your neighbors. They're people you know. They're, you know, like, you know, they come from the town next over from your town. And so when that guy goes, hey, we're going to keep fighting, we're not going to let these guys drive us off our land, like that has a real emotional impact on you.
Yeah.
And so
Hamilton did a great job of capturing that and the leadership of George Washington. And the great thing about Hamilton, which is one of the top movies in our list, one of the great things about Hamilton is they took the spirit of Hamilton's life and they took the ups and downs and they put it in this play. So emotionally, even though it's as long as however the length of the play is, but emotionally you go through the whole arc of his life.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, you have that thing. And then when, he loses his son to that duel, I mean, that breaks you in half. But that, it does a really great job of that, and music has a way of doing that. But that moment when, George Washington is despondent and, they have no money, and the money they do have, some of the people that are loyal to the British aren't even taking their money.
Yeah.
And they're starving and they're freezing and it's in the winter. And the kind of backbone and resolve to stick to it and to complete it, because and all these are like George Washington could have either been the hero of the new nation, or he would have been hanged. He would have been a prisoner and hanged by the British Army.
Absolutely.
All those officers,
all of those guys, everybody who signed the Declaration of Independence would have been hung.
Yep. And so that's a different type of mental toughness right there, knowing that you have no money, you have no army, and you're fighting one of the biggest superpowers in the world, and you got some, you got the French helping, you got some things, the terrain, you got some advantages, but you're starving and your people are starving, and if you lose, you're dead. You're a dead person.
That is one of the reasons why when people talk about terrorism and they say, oh, that person's just a terrorist. Like sometimes, legitimately that is true. But the difference between a terrorist and a freedom fighter is who won, right? Mm-hmm. Because if the colonists had lost, all those guys are just terrorists, right?
Yeah. Right.
That's who they are, and they're hung, and their names are spoken as villains. They're villainous from then on. The difference is they actually won.
That's why it's really important. It depends on who writes the history.
Yep.
Who gets the last say?
Winners tend to write the history.
That's what I'm saying. That's the point I'm making.
Yeah.
And, it's important to really do deep dives into history, because what you think and what you've kind of been taught or how you've been conditioned, once you get really into the weeds and start reading, you're like, oh shit, like it wasn't quite what. And you realize that whenever something's easy, like 1492, Columbus sailed across the ocean blue, like all these sayings or whatever, and it's easy, and you have then you're not really getting the deep, nuanced complexity of actual Columbus discovering America and what happened and what he did. And so, so like whenever you're kind of going, and then you kind of have to decondition yourself to the cartoon version of history and really dive in and being able to not have your identity wrapped up in any outcome or anything that's happening.
Well, one of my early history teachers when I was fairly young and it was expressing a lot of interest in history, and this is a common saying, but he said, follow the money. No one has ever done anything without expecting some sort of pay or some sort of payday, right? We would all still be British citizens if the founding fathers had felt like England was giving them a fair shake tax-wise, right? It was money. It was money that pushed the revolution. It was, Britain wanted to fight us because of the.
Did you say we would all be speaking English?
No, I said we would all still be British citizens.
Oh,
yeah. The British wanted to hang on to the colonies because of the enormous wealth here. But you look at things like, you were mentioning Christopher Columbus, and it's like, the simple storybook version is he wanted to discover new things, and so he sailed across and it was all about discovery. No, he wanted to get rich. He came over here to get rich. He wanted to find this other route into India because there was enormous wealth to be made in the spice trade with India. And that's what he was trying to find. And when he didn't find that, he just took a bunch of slaves, right? That's how he made his money. He just enslaved a bunch of people because that was the way he could make money. So when you're studying history like this, you don't stop until you find out what was the monetary reason for the thing happening.
Yeah. I remember the first time I read Howard Zinn, 1492 to the present, and he has Columbus's diaries within the book. and you can read and he's talking about, I think it's when he first got to the Bahamas, and he was talking about how beautiful their culture was, how generous and how giving they were. And he was like, we can enslave them easy, or,
right.
Basically we can rob them and they don't even know we're robbing them.
Right.
And I was like, oh my, this is not the Christopher Columbus of my childhood.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. You read that stuff and it's a very different picture of who that man was. So all of this stuff, with this historical stuff, you dig down, you find who got paid, what is the monetary reason why these things happened. And sometimes those reasons seem a little less mercenary than others. I mean, I think people going, we are being unfairly taxed. We don't feel like we're getting any benefit for this tax. We feel like this is unfair. That seems like a pretty good reason to fight a war, right? Like, and so I still remain on the colonist side of that, even when you dig down to the details. I think they had a justified position. I think they had a position there. And taking it back to the whole Independence Day kind of theme, that is what they were trying to do. They were saying their feeling was, we've been under a king. We don't like kings. We don't want a king. We want like this distributed power where the people have some power through this, and there's an executive that has some power over this, and there's these court systems that have power over that. And like you said, the checks and balances of it. But the other weird thing about humans, having said all of that, is that there is this resistance to being ruled. There's this resistance to centralized power that we all seem to instinctively have. And there is also this desire for somebody to come and just make everything better. Mm-hmm. And those two warring things create a lot of the turmoil because, as has been written about many times, if George Washington had been okay with being made a king, we would have a king, right? I mean, if Washington had said, yeah, I'll be king of America, we would have a king. Even though part of what they were fighting against is we don't want to be ruled by kings anymore, because they loved Washington. They trusted him. They liked him. And they were like, oh, well, this guy's okay. If we make him king, everything will be fine. And then we'll have this guy who takes care of us because we love him. Yeah. So there's this weird, there's this weird conflict between those two poles of, I don't want to be ruled, but also I kind of do want to be ruled because I want somebody to take care of me.
Right. Yeah. Right. So we got Hamilton, we got John Adams. What else did we say? What was the other one?
1776. The Patriot and Drums Along the Mohawk. And I would like to make a mention.
Oh, no. I'm talking about the list. Like Hamilton's on the list. John Adams is on the list. Yeah. And then what else is on the list?
You mean of five? Our top five?
Yeah, for the top five. Yeah. What were you going to say, Joseph? Sorry.
I was going to say, since we added John Adams, I really loved the TV show Turn that actually had Burn Gorman in it.
Oh, yeah.
That was a great
show. Yeah. Our guy Burn is in it. Yeah.
In honor of Burn, I haven't seen it, but in honor of Burn, we'll put it in there.
It's really well done, and it much more is the details of the sort of political and military aspects of the revolution, but also a big part of it is the spycraft of the revolution. The British spies and American and colony spies and the way that each side was trying to get an advantage through spycraft. That part of it is really interesting. It's something that not a lot of movies or TV shows have delved into.
For fun, should we have a little alien in there, like a little Independence Day?
Well, I mean, that's not really about the Revolutionary War, but it is about America leading the revolution against the tyranny of the alien horde.
Yeah. That is the new revolution. Yeah. And that is during Independence Day. And so they called it Independence Day because it had the same spirit of taking this. And also there's something beautiful in the movie that everybody worked together, all the different countries and all the different things.
Now, yes, but to be fair, they were all waiting for America to do it first in the movie.
Yeah.
It was like, thank God those Americans have come up with a plan. Thank God, America.
But here's what's funny to me. They have this incredibly difficult obstacle that the best, was it F-18s? What were they flying? The best It was best F-18 pilots in the world. Maverick is in this on these planes doing this thing, and they have to do this impossible task. They're fighting against these alien fighters. Have to get through and shoot it to the mothership and blow it up. Right? So they do it. They get on the phone. And all of a sudden, all the other countries are just making it happen. It's like, well, wait a minute. You mean everybody has that type of that type of Air Force, and everybody is going to make it through like that easy, and it's going to just happen instantaneous like that?
I mean, I don't think there's any question that America has the most powerful Air Force in the world, but there are certainly other Air Forces around the world that have significant air power.
Of course, but I'm saying it's like there was a lot of luck.
Yeah.
Within that happened, like it just so happened we had a guy that was willing to, sacrifice himself for the greater good, and it was difficult, and it was with one of the best air forces in the world.
Well, I think
all the countries.
The idea seems to be that the trick they learned is once the alien shields are down, you wait till the big gun is just about to fire and you hit it with a bomb, which. Okay. They accidentally figured out when Randy Quaid ran his airplane into the big gun just as it was about to fire. But that is a replicable thing. You could tell the other guys, you could say, hey, we've knocked all their shields down. When the big ship is about to fire its gun, hit it with a missile and the whole ship blows up. Like I could see that. Yeah.
By the way, you're going to go up against hundreds of thousands of superior aircraft.
Well, but they didn't have their shields
to get
anymore.
To that hard surge.
The little ships didn't have their shields.
But they blot out the sky with their numbers, and they're like the TIE fighters in Star Wars.
And they fired that green shit.
Yeah, and they fire green shit, and they're more maneuverable.
Yeah, they're super maneuverable.
They're more maneuverable than F-18s. So,
and as long as we're on that. Let's not ignore that movie. If we're going to put it on the list, let's talk about it. What I didn't understand is, so you knock the shields down, which I understand why they couldn't kill the planes, the ships before that, because the shields just stopped the missiles, right? Once the shields are down, why are you still attacking the edges of the dish with F-18s? Why aren't you taking like bombers and flying over the top of the dish and just carpet bombing the top of it? Like, I don't think an AMRAAM is the best weapon to use on a 2-kilometer wide flying saucer. I think like a B-52 carrying like 200,000 pounds.
B-52? What are we? What is this? 1942?
Or B-1 or whatever. I'm talking. Get the biggest plane you can, load it with the most bombs you can, and fly over the top of the dish and just carpet bomb it. That seems like a much better way to attack. But they're still just shooting like AMRAAMs at this thing,
Mm. All I gotta say is Independence Day. You better be glad this isn't a populated category because you would not be on the top 5. What else do we got? We got Hamilton, John Adams, Turn, Independence Day. What else?
The
Patriot.
I did not. I did not like the Patriot. I like Mel Gibson.
I wasn't a huge
as
fan.
An actor, but that movie. So that movie is just so like over the top. Like every emotional beat is always turned up to 11, and it's just it's like wading through molasses. That movie is emotionally, it's like wading through molasses. It's just kind of.
Well, you mentioned over the top. I mean, It doesn't get more American than that. Arm or big rigger going to arm wrestling tournaments. I don't think there's any Independence Day, but that could be in the category in terms of American movies. What else is on our list? Let me see real quick. Wait, does the Sandlot take place on 4th of July?
Oh, does it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. It
does. Sandlot's a great
remember they
movie.
Run out. Yeah. I said, because remember he runs out and he's grabbing the food and they're running to play baseball. And, that's a great 4th of July movie for the culture of celebration of 4th of July, the American celebration of 4th of July.
Yep.
Because they're playing baseball, they're, barbecuing hot dogs and, fireworks and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And The Sandlot is just legitimately a fantastic movie.
It is. My kids love that movie.
Everybody loves that movie. Like kids love it, adults love it. So that movie is the opposite of The Patriot in that movie throws a lot of emotions at you, but they're all earned and you feel them, right? It's not the movie clubbing you over the head with emotions.
it's the opposite of the Patriot in more ways than that. It's just the complete opposite.
I'm just talking about storytelling wise, like
yeah,
it's really lets you engage with the emotional center of the movie rather than clubbing you over the head with it, which always drives me nuts when movies are just like hitting you over the head, like you're supposed to feel sad right now, and then they hit you on the head. Yeah, Sandlot's great.
All right, so Hamilton, John Adams' Turn, Independence Day, and Sandlot.
And I think Independence Day goes to the bottom of that list. It's categorically correct, but I'm not gonna lie. I went to the theater and watched Independence Day at the theater just like everyone else in America did. Like all 300 million Americans went and saw that movie. I had as much fun watching that movie as all the other 300 million Americans. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm not gonna front. That is a very silly, ridiculous, enjoyable movie that when you think back on it later is filled with stupid stuff where you're like, what? But while you're watching it, you're just having a good time. So I'm not going to lie about that.
Well, so here's our list. Hamilton, John Adams, Turn, Sandlot, Independence Day. Thank you, and thank America. God bless you, and thank you for hanging out with us. Say goodbye, Ty.
Goodbye, America.
Welcome back to Tying That Guy.